Chapter 4, Tuesday, June 30. See here a map that shows positions at dawn on June 30. See the Union Army front line running from Emmitsburg on the west to Westminster on the east, and Buford and Kilpatrick's cavalry divisions out to the north. The Confederate Army was straddling South Mountain, 3 divisions on the east side and the other 6 on the west side in the Cumberland Valley. See here a loop that shows Union movements on the 30th. Both generals, Lee and Meade, hoped to fight a defensive battle. They each hoped to pick a spot to defend and then draw the enemy into attacking them at their chosen field. The position General Meade picked out was behind Pipe Creek and rested on Parr Ridge. It was called the Pipe Creek Line and ran from Middleburg to Manchester. See this map. See Hagerstown on the west, Frederick to the south, Gettysburg to the north. Emmitsburg is just to the south of the state line. The Pipe Creek line was here, Middleburg on the west, Manchester on the east. This was a position that Meade and his staff believed would cover the approaches to Baltimore and Washington, D.C., and was judged as almost impossible to take in a frontal attack or to turn with a flanking maneuver. It was also close to their new supply base at Westminster, and see the rail connection, which runs south from Westminster back to Baltimore. Coddington pointed out 2 problems with the Pipe Creek plan. One was that his wily opponent, General Lee, might refuse to attack that position. Lee might decide to refuse battle on those terms and simply take all the livestock and foodstuff they'd gathered back to Virginia. Coddington wrote that if Lee got away unpunished, the loss to Northern morale and prestige would be incalculable, unquote. The second issue was that to fight at Gettysburg, Meade would move forward in the face of the invading enemy. Meade would retreat to fight at Pipe Creek. Advancing to battle at Gettysburg might engage and inspire the Northern Army, while a retreat to Pipe Creek might demoralize the army. General Buford's cavalry division arrived at Gettysburg midday on the 30th, and he sent scouts out in all directions. Buford sent a message to General Reynolds at 10 p.m. Why Reynolds? General Reynolds was the commander of Meade's left wing, which was the 1st, 3rd, and 11th Corps. Also 1st Corps commander, was the closest general officer, and in effect was operating with Meade's authority. See a copy of Buford's message from the official records, reporting that Hill's Corps was at Cashtown, and Ewell's Corps was at Petersburg and moving south. Buford wrote that he suspected Longstreet's Corps was behind Hill's Corps. See this map showing positions at the end of the day on the 30th and compare it to Buford's 10 p.m. report. Buford said Hill's Corps was just back of Cashtown, unquote. See 2 of Hill's divisions at Cashtown. Buford reported that Ewell's Corps was coming south from Carlisle with Rodes's division in the lead at Petersburg. See Rodes's division and Petersburg. Buford reported that Longstreet's Corps was behind Hill. Longstreet's 3 divisions were all on the west side of South Mountain near Chambersburg. This intelligence reached General Reynolds at Emmitsburg about midnight and General Meade at Taneytown the next morning, the 1st. Where does Lee think Meade's army is? I'll tell you in a minute or two. As June 30 wore on, information about enemy activity continued to come in, and General Meade became more concerned about the area from Gettysburg to Emmitsburg. By the end of the day, Meade believed that his primary goal of preventing an invasion beyond the Susquehanna was now achieved. And how did Meade know that? The telegraph line was cut, and he wasn't getting intelligence from General Halleck at Washington, D.C., or from General Couch at Harrisburg. Or maybe by the end of the 30th, the line was fixed. I don't know when the connection was restored. Maybe part of the answer is this piece of intelligence he received from General Reynolds. Reynolds got it from General Buford. This is a captured order sent from the Confederate division commander, General Early, to a colonel, apparently a cavalry officer, whose name is not given. The message implied that Ewell's corps, formerly at Carlisle and York, would be at Heidlersburg, here, on the evening of the 30th. In other words, Ewell was now moving south towards Gettysburg. See here a map showing where units moved on the 30th. This was the day before the battle started. See Ewell countermarching south, Hill and Longstreet moving east, while Meade continued on the 30th, moving to the northeast. And in the middle of all this, that green arrow is Jeb Stuart's cavalry division continuing north. Sears wrote, Meade ordered the 5th Corps, now under George Sykes, and John Sedgwick's 6th Corps, largest in the Army, to shift eastward to Union Mills and Manchester in Maryland. Had Stuart not severed the Army's telegraph connections with Washington, Meade would have learned of Ewell's and Early's countermarches southward soon after they began, and redirected Sykes and Sedgwick accordingly. So it happened that on June 30, something over a quarter of the Potomac Army's infantry strength was marching obliquely away from what seemed a likely confrontation at Gettysburg, unquote. That's what Sears wrote. Sears understates the relative size of 5th plus 6th Corps. He wrote that it was something over a quarter, unquote. When I do the math, using Philip Lano's numbers, 5th plus 6th Corps is 32% of Meade's total infantry numbers, and 32% is just a hair short of 1/3. The problem Meade will have in getting his troops to the field at the start of the battle is one big problem with two faces. First, his wily opponent, General Lee, tricked Meade into steering his army to the east. And second, Meade was delayed in figuring out the mistake because Stuart cut the telegraph lines. So at the critical moment, Meade lost his intelligence feed for about 36 hours and was late discovering his mistake. The 6th Corps was Meade's biggest single infantry unit, and they didn't get the order to march to Gettysburg until 8 p.m. on the 1st. Back to the map showing positions at dawn on June 30. Where did General Lee think the Union Army was? Lee heard the report from the spy Harrison on the night of the 28th, which reported 3 corps near Frederick. Then the historians say Lee sent out scouts who reported Union troops at Middleburg. Stephen Sears wrote that on June 30, Lee had only the most general idea of the whereabouts of the enemy's forces, unquote. Middleburg, which the scouts reported, was probably what Lee was thinking, and my source for that is the conversation that night between Corps Commander A.P. Hill, Division Commander Harry Heath, and Brigade Commander J. Johnston Pettigrew, and more about that later. Middleburg is well south into Maryland, and in fact, 4 of the 7 federal corps were past Middleburg. 2 of the 3 federal cavalry divisions were out of Maryland up into Pennsylvania. See here a recording of Confederate movements on the 30th running in a loop. Lee expected a battle somewhere along the Chambersburg-Gettysburg pike, which is here. This was a time of quiet waiting at Chambersburg, and Lee is quoted joking with General Hood, a division commander in Longstreet's corps. "Ah, General, the enemy's a long time finding us. If he does not succeed soon, we must go in search of him," unquote. Lee still hadn't heard from General Stuart, and what cavalry Lee had could not cope with John Buford, who kept a tight screen covering the front of the Union Army. As I mentioned a moment ago, Lee sent out scouts trying to find the Federal Army, and those scouts reported Federal troops at Middleburg to the south in Maryland. On the east side of South Mountain, see Rhodes and Early's divisions heading for Heidlersburg. Further south, see Stuart's cavalry division run into Kilpatrick's Union cavalry division at Hanover. They fought to a standoff. Stuart was desperate to get to Carlisle to catch up with Ewell's corps, so when it got dark, Stuart slipped away to the east. To the west, see Pender's division cross the pass on the 30th and join Heath's division at Cashtown, and see two of Longstreet's divisions queue up at Fayetteville, getting ready to cross the pass themselves. And as Hood's division moves east to Fayetteville, see Law's brigade split off to New Guilford, and more on that in a moment. See this map again, showing positions late in the afternoon of the 30th. Gettysburg is here, Chambersburg here, Cashtown Pass is about here. See Rhodes and Early to the north, and Heath and Pender to the west. Buford's division is at Gettysburg, with the Union 1st and 11th Corps in position to the south. Coddington wrote that at the end of the day, Lee would have 4 divisions east of the pass, and that those 4 were located so as to be able to easily converge on Gettysburg and trap any enemy force there. But Coddington wrote that the position of the remaining 5 divisions on the west side was a grave disadvantage, unquote. He continued, writing here about Lee, should he need to get the remaining divisions to the other side of the mountain in a hurry, he would have to crowd them and their long artillery and wagon trains onto a single road, up steep grades for a distance of 9 or 10 miles and through Cashtown Pass, unquote. Getting units across Cashtown Pass is one difficulty Lee faced getting troops to the battlefield. A second problem was mismanagement of the available cavalry units. Usually, cavalry would guard an army's flanks or rear and watch over defenseless assets like wagon trains and headquarters units. General Lee didn't have trusted, competent cavalry at hand to do that. As a result, if troops were needed to guard the army's rear flanks or to escort a wagon train, infantry units had to fill in, which meant those troops weren't available to do their normal jobs as infantry. And at times, it seemed that no one was available to do scouting, and General Lee was left not knowing where the enemy was. One example of a valuable infantry unit doing cavalry tasks was Pickett's division here. They were held back near Chambersburg to guard the army's rear. A second example was Law's brigade from Hood's division. On the 30th, as part of the shift to the east, General Longstreet ordered McLaws and Hood's 2 divisions forward to Fayetteville. This is close to but not across Cashtown Gap. But Lee felt his flank was exposed as Meade's army approached South Mountain. In particular, there's a road that comes from the southeast across the mountain from Fairfield, here. Lee wanted the area guarded to block any attack from that direction. Normally, this would be a job for a cavalry unit, but as I said, Lee didn't have any trusted, competent cavalry available, so he had to use an infantry unit. In this case, General Hood detached Law's brigade to New Guilford to guard the road. This will come with a price on July 2. Enough said for now. Law's brigade split off and camped at New Guilford, while Hood's division continued west to Fayetteville. Also on the 30th, Major General Harry Heath sent Pettigrew's brigade into Gettysburg. Pettigrew's brigade was one of the 4 brigades in Heath's division. Heath's division is on the map here. I don't show Pettigrew's brigade on the map, but on the afternoon of the 30th, they marched east down the Chambersburg Pike toward Gettysburg. Pettigrew's Confederate infantry bumped into Buford's Federal cavalry. The brigade commander, Brigadier General J. Johnston Pettigrew, before he started that morning, was cautioned not to start a fight, and the Confederate infantry accordingly withdrew, followed cautiously by the Union cavalry. That evening, General Pettigrew reported all this to the division commander, Harry Heath. Heath and his boss, the Corps commander, A.P. Hill, both replied they were confident there were no regular Union troops around. The Union Army was at Middleburg, but A.P. Hill said that he hoped it was regular Federal troops in Gettysburg, as this was the place he wanted them to be. Later that night, General Heath asked General Hill for permission to go see who was in Gettysburg, and Hill said he had no objection. Tomorrow morning was July 1, and the bleep will hit the fan. Next, Chapter 5, the Union side of July 1.